Hello, good evening. You're not on the wrong channel. Ian is away. I'm sitting in for him. I believe it's the first time this has happened. My name's Vanessa Vine. We're going to talk mostly about Pennsylvania this evening. Before that, we will have information about various things that are going on in England. And first of all, we have a message from Ian that he's pre-recorded from where he is.
Well, this is Ian R. Crane. As you can probably tell, I'm not in the studio this week. And thanks to Vanessa Vine for stepping into my shoes in the Plymouth studio tonight. But last Thursday, I was up at Beverley in East Yorkshire to witness an absolute travesty. The East Yorkshire Planning Committee effectively waved Rathlin Energy through to their new well site at West Newton B. The level of discussion was pathetic. Despite Rathlin Energy having 19 breaches of the environmental permit, nonetheless, this was pretty much ignored. And in fact, when the planning officer was asked a direct question, he said, well, yeah, Rathlin maybe have one or two issues that they need to address. So the guy is either incompetent or has a very casual relationship with truth. The great irony of this is that having passed Rathlin's application by 7 votes, in fact there was no attempt to establish whether the remaining councillors wished to vote against or to abstain, it was simply passed. In the afternoon there was a discussion as to whether an existing wind farm should be extended by a further 3 windmills, and this was rejected. The Planning Committee were effectively completely turning 180 degrees from the arguments that they had presented in the morning as to why they had to pass Rathlin's application, and they were now using the same arguments but completely the reverse to reject the application for the wind farm. Something clearly is not right. In the words of John Jenkins, they must be taking the money because surely they cannot be that stupid. Well, now of course we have a few weeks before Rathlin Energy will start the trucks rolling into West Newton, but this is an opportunity to ensure that the local community of course are aware of what is about to be unleashed upon them. Meanwhile, in the south of the country, shares in UKOG, the UK oil and gas company headed up by David Lenigas, were suspended on Thursday afternoon. Now when trading in a company is suspended, there's normally one of two things about to occur. Either the company is about to announce that it's going into liquidation, or there's an announcement due to be made that will have a significant impact on the stock price. And the reason that the hold is put in place is to try to prevent insider trading. Well, it was the latter case in this situation, and a few weeks ago David Lenigas announced that he had been handed a report by a company called Newtech, who had supported his claim that there was more oil and gas under the south of England than under the entire North Sea. Well, those who saw the subsequent episode of Fracking Nightmare will know that I called David Lenigas out on this and stated categorically that he was a fraud and was fundamentally attempting to lure unsuspecting investors to pump money into his company. And the stock price at that time jumped from around about a penny up to over 4 pence. So that was a 300% increase. Less than 24 hours after that episode of Fracking Nightmare went out, the alternative investment market suspended trading briefly in UKOG's stock, pending the report being further investigated. In fact, they asked for evidence to substantiate his claim. Well, David Lenigas commissioned Schlumberger, because this is my former company, commissioned Schlumberger to produce a report. Now, it was actually acknowledged by Newtech that they had effectively simply made a best guess at the magnitude of the reserves under the Weald. And Schlumberger, remarkably, have increased that best guess by 70%. Now, it's my conjecture that what Schlumberger have effectively done here, David Lenegas was the person who commissioned the report, and Schlumberger have kept the customer happy. They've given the customer what he wanted. He wanted confirmation and support to show that his outrageous estimates of hydrocarbons under the Weald were indeed based on something other than a number being plucked out of the air. Well, the market was singularly unimpressed, because although the stock price did jump when trading reopened on Friday in UKOG stock, by the end of the day it was 0.1 of a penny higher than it had been when trading was stopped the day before. So clearly the market is singularly unimpressed by Schlumberger's report, and I think that the investment community basically have taken a look at David Lenegas and said, you know what, mate, we don't trust you. Interestingly, there is a disclaimer in the report, and it does say that the content of this report should not be used by anyone other than UKOG employees. So watch this space. Meanwhile, it's back to the studio, it's back to Vanessa, and good luck with the show, Vanessa, and I'll see you all next week.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, if you weren't already aware, we're dealing with what we call frack dealers. They have no scruples. There are many shenanigans. The goalposts are moved and the facts are not the facts. There are a few people who know this more, apart from people in Queensland, than the people in Pennsylvania, which has become called Fracksylvania. There is no excuse for our politicians to allow this to happen here. We have the hindsight of the most terrible destruction. There's something called the List of the Harmed by the Pennsylvania Alliance for Clean Water and Air. It now has more than 16,000 people on it. And I want to say that, as may be apparent, I haven't done a show like this before. I've never even created a PowerPoint like this before. There will be some silly moments, there may be some mistakes. The opening wasn't particularly smooth. But there is a very serious element to this, and I want to dedicate this show to a man who died a year ago today. His name was Terry Greenwood, and he was a farmer in Pennsylvania. And he predicted what would happen. He said it killed the cattle, and it will kill the people next. When he died, Debbie Ziegler-Lambert said, "It is with a heavy heart that I share this news, that one of the kindest, gentlest and most caring persons I have encountered has passed away." She added, "Another collateral damage in the sacrifice zone of lots of great jobs and energy independence. Rest in peace, sir." And from attorney John Smith, Terry's drinking water was confirmed by the PA DEP to be contaminated from oil and gas drilling operations. He was provided with a temporary water source, but to my knowledge, despite several years of waiting, was never provided a permanent replacement source. He was a good man who fought for all Pennsylvania citizens to have pure water. He will be missed. So we're going to be speaking quite a lot about Pennsylvania this evening, and we don't have any Skype guests, but I have some clips and some more information that will come later on. But I wanted to bring that in because of the anniversary today of Terry's passing. Some good news about Balcombe. Balcombe has become, I don't quite know how to put it, but the fracking industry coming to middle-class Middle England has spawned a renewable energy surge. Balcombe is now intending to go 100% solar. The Repower Balcombe scheme was set up purely because the fracking industry came to town. That is one good thing that is coming from this industry. A lot more people, although we have to fight what we're being threatened with, are thinking about what the alternatives are and what we need to do instead, and where the investment needs to go and where the energy needs to go, and what realistically needs to happen if we're going to survive, frankly. What is also just broken is that we have discovered that the Environment Agency has presented a consultation. I say consultation because we know from experience that they don't listen. Whatever we say, whatever articulate objections we give, they're disregarded. That doesn't mean we don't object. We need to be able to say that they had 9,000 objections, and 3 days later, when we were objecting to them granting Quadrilla a mining waste permit for Balcombe, they said they granted the permit anyway, citing low public interest. So we can quote those figures, and we have to keep doing it. But what has come out now is that quietly, under the radar, the Environment Agency is looking at giving non-site specific permits for fracking operations. This is not just in drilling operations. This is not just in Balcombe, which includes hydrofluoric acid. Hydrofluoric acid is an incredibly caustic, toxic fluid. In the States, the frack field workers are trying to get it banned. It is incredibly dangerous. So, tucked quietly away in the waste management plan is the suggestion that hydrofluoric acid, one of the world's most toxic and caustic chemicals, should be permitted as a means of releasing oil and gas from shale. Even small splashes of hydrofluoric acid on the skin can be fatal. Inhalation causes permanent lung damage. So, to Balcombe residents today, there's a press release that's gone out from the Frack Free Balcombe Residents Association. Site workers and local communities should not be exposed to such risk. Do we want to see tankers full of this deadly substance travelling up and down our English country lanes? This is Charles Metcalfe, who is the chairman of the Balcombe Parish Council now and has been opposing this industry for more than 3 years, for as long as I have. 3.5 years more. He's one of the few people who realised in the early days just what was coming. Statistically, 1% of wells blow out. If a well containing hydrofluoric acid were to blow out, what would the consequences be? And Helen Savage, who also lives in Balcombe, said today, now it all becomes clear. All the while our government tells us this industry has the strictest regulations. It is quietly making moves to erode protections and make way for business. The concerns of ecology and local inhabitants, receptors, they call us, the local inhabitants, I live 4 miles from this site, as we're called in this document, are most definitely a secondary consideration. So we know that the government is completely enmeshed with the industry. I generally write government/industry. There is no separation. The legislators at local and national level are forcing through a toxic industry, a toxic process at every level, and it is a process, a technology and an industry that can never be regulated into safety. This is the biggest risk we're up against. We'll talk more in a little while about the political competition that's going on to see who can look more anti-fracking in the Labour leadership debate. But as far as we can tell, everybody who's saying that they're anti-fracking is not. What they are in politics, is what I'm saying, with very few exceptions. There were a couple of Lib Dem MPs, Tessa Munt and Norman Baker, who were very much opposing it. Obviously Caroline Lucas, Tessa Munt and Norman Baker both lost their seats at this election. You've got Andy Burnham and Jeremy Corbyn both saying that they are anti-fracking. What Andy Burnham is saying is very much to do with regulation, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to mention one of the places in Sussex that isn't getting as much coverage as it might. There's been so much attention about Balcombe. We had the camp 3 years ago. There was all the hoo-ha about that. It was the second major site in the country after Lancashire, and it was the first one that people knew about. There are other sites. There's Curdford and Wisborough Green, Burnhurst, different stories there, but Billingshurst, Broadford Bridge is at risk, though we don't know how much funding there is behind it. Planning permission was granted by West Sussex County Council in 2013. It's Celtic Energy. Magellan Corporation holds 50% interest. The pad has been excavated and developed. Security fencing is in place. The drill could arrive any day if they have the funding to do it. What Celtic are doing is what a lot of the companies are doing now, which is avoiding the F word. Now people understand what fracking is. They talk about shale gas, or they say they imply, or they lie outright and say they will not be fracking. Magellan have been telling USA investors and shareholders that there is a huge potential for unconventional targets at this site. Unconventional oil and gas is not the conventional nodding donkey. Have you noticed in the media, when all the media do reports about fracking, they show pictures of nodding donkeys at sunset? That's not a fracking rig. A fracking rig is a whole different story. It's a whole different impact, not the conventional oil and gas is what we need to be sticking with anyway. But fracking is a whole different story, which is why they're not using the word. We're now going to have a clip from Ian's film, Voices from the Gas Fields, which I urge you to watch all of. It's very powerful.
Shale gas is part of the future and we will make it happen.
I'm charged with, without lawful authority or excuse, obstructing the highway. Well, I believe I have lawful excuse.
We're going to take very great care that there is no damage to the water supply.
Gas at Barton Moss contaminated the well site. Then Rathwin Energy were responsible for considerable property damage as a result of their seismic testing.
There is a fishing lake which started to go down immediately following the detonation of these charges.
I think there's a huge amount of myths that are being put round in order to frighten people.
The first person that signed a well was the person that doomed us to this. An unconventional gas well isn't a pipe out of the ground. With it comes all of the drilling and the destruction. That's a hectare. Plus tracks, compressor stations, water holding ponds.
So we're right in the middle of the Australian bush here. Well, it was once bush.
We take a strip literally 520 kilometres for this one company. We sit on the Great Artesian Basin, one of the greatest water resources in the world, and they are allowed to deplete it and turn it to trash.
There used to be a beautiful green lawn with roses in it. 3 nights of rain, it was dead. Each time it rains, it just comes out black.
You're genuinely so scared of what is happening. It's untrustworthy and it's running out.
This is called a high point vent. That'll have everything in it.
The benzene, the toluene, the ethyl benzenes.
Everything.
When your nose is burning, your eyes are burning, and you got that terrible oily sort of taste, I said, you know, the flares are not, they're just venting. Then other times, it's like little fibres in your throat, you know, the flare is on.
The majority of people that have visited us, they say, how can you live there? You know.
Watch that film. It's on YouTube. Watch it. Send it to everybody. I mentioned earlier about the political competition. So we had a situation a few days ago where Andy Burnham, who is a candidate for Labour opposition leader, Labour leader, and is now suddenly claiming to be anti-fracking. It's not very convincing. He said he was stunned a while ago to discover that there were 9 wells potentially in his constituency, and his constituents have been writing to him for a long time. He didn't defy the whip along with with 20 courageous Labour MPs over the vote on the moratorium on the 26th of January. Some say he couldn't have done because he's a shadow cabinet minister, but remember the shadow cabinet, but people have. Tessa Munt did it. He didn't sign the anti-fracking pledge that Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth organised before the election. He didn't support Caroline Lucas's early day motion in 2012, calling for a moratorium. And then yesterday, Jeremy Corbyn tweeted that who is also in the candidacy for Labour leadership, that he opposes fracking because of the risk of water pollution. Now, he did sign the early day motion, quite unusually, back in 2012. He did defy the whip and voted for a moratorium in January, unlike Andy Burnham, who abstained. He didn't sign the Greenpeace Friends of the Earth anti-fracking pledge, which is a bit strange. So he seems more genuine, but we wonder what's really going on here. This is a letter that was sent by Andy Burnham to a constituent last year. And just to bear out what I was saying, a lot of people on social media are saying, hey, great, Labour wants to be having a U-turn and is going anti-fracking. No, scratch the surface, look beneath what they're saying. Only by fully addressing legitimate environmental and safety concerns about fracking with robust regulation, comprehensive monitoring and strict enforcement will people have confidence that the exploration and possible extraction of shale gas is a safe and reliable source that can contribute to the UK's energy mix. He is not anti-fracking. Andy Burnham is pushing for a future of regulated fracking, which is a path to suicide. This is, I can't reiterate this too much, this is the biggest problem we're up against. And the problem that when these statements are made and go out on social media and people get all excited about it and somehow subliminally they listen to all this stuff about the robust regulatory regime and they think, actually maybe if it was regulated then, well, it's better than not letting it happen. Well, actually no, because it can't be regulated. We know that it can't. We know that the regulations are weakened. We see what is happening with this hydrofluoric acid. There are untold numbers of things that have been pushed through before that are not. The Environment Agency is not acting in the interests of people or wild ecology. It's so blatantly clear for anybody in a community who's lived near a potential fracking site. Let's not get to the point where everybody has to find out the hard way. Again, the end of Andy Burnham's letter. Labour will continue to push for the environmental framework to be strengthened in these areas and for assurances that the responsibility for clean-up costs and liability for any untoward consequences rests fairly and squarely with the industry, not with taxpayers or homeowners. Now that's speaking to what homeowners and taxpayers want to hear, but it's nonsense, I didn't swear. This stuff can't be cleaned up. You cannot clean a contaminated aquifer. What evacuation procedures are in place for any of these sites for blowouts? There aren't any. Talk to the emergency services. You can't ameliorate this, you can't make it safe, and you can't regulate it into safety. It's just nonsense. Another little announcement that came out today, also connected with Labour. So UCOOG, which is the government, and the GMB union have reached a landmark agreement on shale gas. The Charter underlines a joint commitment to ensure that gas is recognised as an essential to British industry and households and blah, 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 and you can read it and it's all there in the press release online. Essentially what we're seeing is that it's at least one union in bed with government pushing the shale gas agenda. There was a lot of argument about Unite around the time of the election because they made quite a substantial donation to Labour, as they do. It seems that Unite members are anti-fracking, but there's a bit of a difference with the management. And we'll have to see how that plays out. So back to what needs to happen in this country. On the 23rd of June, 26th of June in Preston, Lancashire County Council is going to be deciding on yet another critical precedent. So if this is allowed to happen, two of these biggest fracking tests, each site would have 4 horizontal wells. They go out a long way underground, producing tens of millions of gallons of radioactive and toxic waste, opening the door to thousands more wells to be drilled across Lancashire and the rest of the UK. More than 60% of this country is already potentially licensed for the unconventional fossil fuel industry. So there's a big demonstration. People are coming from all over the country and possibly from abroad, because this is going to be a very big one. There are buses and coaches being laid on from Sussex, I think from Nottingham. If you look on social media, if you do a search on the frack stops here too, you'll find all the different coaches and buses. People are getting on trains. If you ever wanted to go to an anti-fracking demonstration and show solidarity with the area of the country that David Cameron wants, he says he wants to make Blackpool the shale gas capital of Europe. If you want that to happen, stay at home on the 23rd of June. If you don't, maybe go and show some solidarity. Ian has provided a slide here with, coaches from Manchester, Chester, Wrexham, Ellesmere Port, all the other communities that are threatened, even Portsmouth, Nottingham. Yeah, have a little look there. That's all online as well. And something that Ian asked me to mention, I don't personally know that much about it, but he mentioned it last week's show as well. Thursday the 18th of June, Third Energy application for a re-injection well at Ebbston Moor on the North York Moors Planning Committee meeting decision. Re-injection wells are very bad news, and this is where a lot of the reports from the States come from of triggered seismic activity when the fracking fluid is re-injected into the well. Not only the pressure with the seismicity, of course, but the toxicity and the radioactivity that's in there. So this is a graphic that Ian made a while ago of the density of wells in Queensland. Do you want East Yorkshire or the Fylde in Lancashire or Sussex to look like that? If not, and if you ever thought somebody ought to do something about this, may I remind you that you are somebody. This is only going to take individual people, independent, everyday people, making local community groups if there isn't already one in your area, joining one if there is. Don't sit back and wait for somebody else to do this. It's not going to happen. There are activists who are committed to this and have been for years and will be, but there aren't enough to go around. This has to be communities that fight this. This has to be individual people standing up and taking responsibility. Now, Fracksylvania, Pennsylvania. I mentioned Terry Greenwood earlier. The list of the harmed in Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, has reached 16,000 plus people that have been harmed or worse by this industry. This is Carol Jean Moten. She's in Avella, Pennsylvania. I'm about to show a clip of her speaking a year ago, and we'll let her speak for herself.
And did not give us the water results. My neighbor, I had to pick him up off the street. My name is Carol Jean Moten. I'm from Avella, Pennsylvania. That's in Washington County, about 20 miles from here. I'm a caretaker for Joseph Giovannini, voluntary basis. My situation out in Avella is with the Mark West plant and Atlas Energy, and they have continuously released several times. They fracked for 6 weeks, 24/7. We couldn't understand why. We thought it was just at night, but we couldn't understand why our throats had the moisture just taken out of them. We have heavy legs. We have people with neurological problems. We have problems with skin rashes, lesions, trouble breathing, lower back pain, and it seems like after, and you think, well, it's just me, and then whenever you talk to the other neighbors, they're having back pain, explosive diarrhea, vomiting, and the lesions and the rashes. And whenever the weather was warm and the humidity was high, the toluene, benzene, and the chloromethane must attach to the humidity, because whenever you're out there and you sweat, you get a very bad rash. We gave the water to my father. He was a stroke victim, and he had a stroke, and several other people in our neighborhood in Avella have had strokes. I gave him the water. That was back in 2008 whenever they were drilling the wells, and they didn't bother to tell us that the water on top of the hill within walking distance went bad, and we continued to drink the water and feed the water to my father. My father died on January 3rd, 2009. We were both in the emergency room on December 24th, Christmas Eve. I was so sick, I had to crawl across the floor to be able to clean him up and get him ready for bed and put him in bed. And we ended up both in the emergency room on Christmas Eve. He didn't make it out. I made it out. They said they didn't know what it was. They thought it was a virus, but it lasted 6 months, and now it's going on 3 years that has lasted. My dog quit drinking the water. She was a full-bred St. Bernard. She was 11 years old. She was 10 years old. She drank the water up until late in 2008, the summer of 2008. It was blazing hot. She wouldn't drink the water, wouldn't drink the water. We switched her to city water. She kind of didn't like that. And then she just flat out refused. We switched her to bottled water, and she drank the water. But the dog was so smart that when I would get the water out of the jug in the refrigerator, I would have to take a drink out of that jug of water before she would drink it. And I buried that dog on August 26th, 2011. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to stand here today and talk to you, because that's the only way we knew the water went bad. The drilling companies did not notify us. They held, the DEP held our water results for a year and would not give them to us. An attorney, West and Zuberbuehler, held the water results for over a year and did not give us the water results. My neighbor, I had to pick him up off the street with his oxygen tank and his cane because he said his legs just went. They gave him 6 months to live. He only lasted 1 month. His dog died. My dog was 10. My neighbor has a dog, purebred St. Bernard, and the St. Bernard was 2 years old. I watched it drop dead in the yard. This is not acceptable. We need a voice. We need to get together. We need to rise up and tell everybody that the industry has lied to us all. It was not sand and water, and the minute you lie, you become a liar, and you are a liar forever.
Jesus, I am sorry.
I'm done. I'm done. I can't stand up anymore. My back is out. I have crushed disc in my back, and I cannot stand up anymore. This is it. This is just a total outrage. These people, and then they want to regulate themselves? Come on now. What part of clean burning is this when you consider natural gas? It's the plant right over there. Thank you.
This is a canary in the coal mine scenario. This is a canary connection that we are establishing here. I mean, your bird...
It fell off the perch and died. And this was whenever they were releasing and stinking us out continuously.
2008.
Yes.
Everybody should have a bird in their house. Look at this.
No, I won't even get another dog.
Yeah, because...
I'm not putting my animals through this. I have air scrubbers in my house scrubbing my air. And I have a picture of my cat hugging the air scrubber. And when I turn them off, they throw up. My dog threw up yellow stuff. My neighbor threw up yellow stuff. I threw up fluorescent yellow stuff. The air test showed chloromethane, benzene, toluene. Don't know what else it has. Formaldehyde. My dad was as hard as this table whenever he died. He was dead before he was dead. And he looked at me and he told me with those big blue eyes he has, Jeannie, they are going to get us through the water. Will you let me sit up all night so I can watch these trucks go up and down the road? I said, no, Daddy, you can't sit up all night. I said, but he was a chemical handler in World War II, and he knew damn well what those placards were on those trucks. That was not sand and water they were fracking with. They lied from the get-go. The industry lies. They lied, 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 denied, 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 until they all died, died, died. I'm done. I can't take this anymore. They have ruined my life. They have killed my pets. They have killed people in my family. I am sick. Where my 91-year-old mother can't even turn on her water. What the hell is wrong with that picture? Oh, range research. It's just the beginning. It's just the beginning of the end. When you mess with what God gave us to protect, the air, the water, and the earth, you are destructing man's existence. It's like an ethnic cleansing because they prey on the poor people's neighborhoods. They prey on the people who are at distance and can't communicate with other people. This is wrong, and they need to stop.
It has to stop. It has to stop. You can't.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Please help us. Please help us.
What do we do?
Get the word out. Get the word out. Get the word out.
And we have the likes of David Cameron and Peter Lilly and Michael Fallon, Lord Brown, telling us that there is no evidence of any harm done by this industry, no evidence of water contamination, nobody's ever been poisoned. At the end of that video, let's just go back to what Carol Jean said there. I can't take this anymore. They ruined my life. They've killed my pets. They've killed people in my family. I'm sick. My 91-year-old mother can't even turn on her water. I emailed a few friends in Pennsylvania today to see how she is just over a year on. And she's in a bad way, and she really wants to move, but they can't afford to. And her mother is, I guess, 92 now, and that's difficult to move somebody of that age. The other person I'm wanting to dedicate this programme to tonight is the gentleman who you saw come in at the end of that film. He came in behind the door when he heard Carol Jean upset and comforted her. Joe Giovannini, Joseph. I also found out today, when I contacted friends in Pennsylvania, that he died last week. Here he is, speaking about what happened to him.
I have lived here for over 30 years. This was all farmland. It was beautiful. The air was clean. The water was good. Until Range Resources came to my neighborhood. I am being poisoned by this refinery that is less than 1/8 of a mile away from me every single day, 24/7. I have put concrete in my windows to try to buff this, and it does not work. I want to be a friend of Marcellus Shale, but these conditions make it very hard for me to understand why these jobs and this money is so important to these people while it's ruining my life. I have a hydrofrack well 391 feet directly behind my home. They relocated me 9 months because I am disabled. I'm on Social Security. Then they told me nothing about any of the rest of these trucks and then the refinery, and they're going to put 5 more wells on top of this hill. I've got a for sale sign in my front yard. I'm trying to sell my house to somebody, but nobody wants to buy it because of these conditions. I do not have running water in my house, nor have had it for 3 years. When they did Little H1 behind my house, the DEP said that they fractured and contaminated my water well. beyond usage. Then after that, I tried to collect rainwater as a source of water, but I started using it and I started getting open sores in my armpits, my crotch, and my feet. So the water that I have collected from the rain has black soot in the bottom of the tank, and it has an oil sheen on top. So I have no water here whatsoever except for what I buy. It's never dark here at night anymore. It is 24 hours of light. From the flaring and the burn-offs, and the truck traffic has almost become intolerable because it's 24/7 and they do not take a day off.
And now, like Terry Greenwood, he's gone. Rest in peace, Mr. Giovannini. But it's okay, it's perfectly safe. This industry doesn't hurt anybody. Completely safe, they can regulate it. There are so many reports. I mentioned the 16,000 people who are on the list of the harmed, and they're just the ones who've dared to speak out. Some of them have signed non-disclosure agreements, have been made to sign non-disclosure agreements with the industry, threatened with having the replacement water taken away. There have been gagging orders put on whole families, including children. This is happening in America. Do not think it couldn't happen here. It's the same industry. This is something from EcoWatch, also last year. Soon the Smith's cows began showing similar symptoms. Those that didn't die began aborting or giving birth to dead calves. I had an argument with Peter Lilly on Channel 4 News a year or so ago, and he ridiculed me for saying that, for talking about aborting livestock. It happens a lot. All the chickens died too. So did the barn cats, and so did the 3 beloved dogs. None of them old, all previously healthy. 2012 study. Cornell University pharmacology professor indicates that in the gas fields these are typical symptoms in animals and often serve as early warning signs for their owners' subsequent illnesses. We've got canaries in the coal mine, we've got St. Bernards, we've got people dying, but who's listening? The people that I wrote to in Pennsylvania today, amongst them is Yuri Gorby, who is Professor of Geomicrobiology and Earth Processes in New York. Worked for 15 years at Hanford Nuclear Reservation in Washington as part of integrated science teams who were tasked with trying to clean up heavy metals and radionuclides in contaminated groundwater. He's friends with Carol Jean Moten. He's from West Virginia. And he said to me today, none of this is getting any better. Contamination of water is continuing. Leukemia clusters are well established. Other cancers with longer development times are beginning to emerge. Within 5 years, the impact will be evident even to those most blinded by greed and ignorance. Anybody watching this who still doubts this, do you trust his credentials? He said, when I saw what they were doing in my home state of West Virginia, with this new technology of high-volume fracturing and directional drilling, I immediately realised that problems at the Hanford site are nothing compared to the wholesale contamination of water, air, wildlife and people in my home state. Meeting Jeannie, his name for Carol Jean Moten, ignited my fire to try to do something. There are thousands of people in Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Canada, Texas, Australia, Romania, Poland, England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Spain, all over the planet virtually, who are waking up to what this industry is doing. And we do have some whistleblowers. We do have some antidotes to frackademia. Professor David Smythe is one of those very rare animals who is telling us the truth about what's going on. And this was an interesting thing that happened a while ago. Louis Alstad, when he retired as the Executive Vice President of Mobile, he stated boldly, making fracking safe is simply not possible. Are you listening, frack dealers? Because we know that you are lying to us. We know that you are allowing these companies to mark their own homework. Now the industry will tell you that fracking has been around a long time. While that's true, the magnitude of the modern technique is very new. There's been one high-volume, horizontal, slick-water hydraulic fracturing operation in the United Kingdom 4 years ago in Lancashire, and it triggered 2 significant seismic events. There haven't been 200 fracks and nobody noticed. This is a nightmare. We have to stop it. There's one thing I'm going to mention that may or may not be related. When I heard about this, having challenged Peter Lilly, knowing that he was vice chair of Tethys Petroleum that wanted to frack Kazakhstan, have you heard about what's been happening with the critically endangered Saiga antelope? More than 120,000 confirmed dead in the last few weeks in central Kazakhstan. That is more than 1/3 of the global population. We don't know for sure. We know that there is a Russian space program rocket testing operation happening nearby that will involve noxious chemicals. They're telling us it's a virus. It may well be a virus, but 100% of the population in some herds died. That doesn't happen with viruses. They're either poisoned or their immune system is weakened by poison, I would postulate. Watch this story and keep an eye on it. We are losing species at an absolutely terrifying rate. One of the things I'm involved with personally is building memorials to extinct species, because we don't have, as a species, as a being, we don't have the emotional comprehension to cope with the enormity of this situation. We hear that a species has been declared extinct on a Radio 4 headline at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we say, oh dear, and we do the school run and we go to work and we forget about it. So we started building cairns and memorials where people can grieve and cathart and maybe actually get it and be able to do something. I want to move on to someone I consider a friend, though I've never met, which is the case a lot with social media these days. Is a man called John LaRose, who's a Mohawk man in Pennsylvania. He is with an owl called Buttercup. And some while ago, we were just in touch on Facebook through the whole anti-fracking campaign. And he sent to me, via a friend called Lizzie, the Mohawk Warrior Unity flag. It's become a symbol of the Idle No More movement. It's become a symbol of the First Nations people fighting this industry, because the First Nations people are up against this industry as much as anyone. The reservations are often put in areas where they know that the industry is planning to operate. In Elsipogtog, so-called New Brunswick in Canada, this flag flies a lot. John sent me this flag. I've flown it at Downing Street. I've flown it at number 10. Flown it at Balcombe. And this is what he said when he sent it to me. By virtue of my heritage, I'm obligated to protect and defend Turtle Island, the Americas, and all of Mother Earth for that matter. I live in what once was the peaceful mountains of north-central Pennsylvania. I was so blessed to have true wilderness just out my back door. This shale gas business is taking all of that away. In our world, when making a decision, we first look back to the ancestors and then ahead for the next 7 generations. It's our work to protect the next 7 generations. This business threatens those yet to be born. I have no choice but to stand firmly against it. Idle No More is the cry many of us rally round. The warrior flag you carry is about protecting Turtle Island and the next 7 generations. He said, I will send prayers and smoke for your success. I can't read the rest of the slide because I've just lost it. I hope you can still see it. It was a very poignant thing for me to receive that flag. I've been very honoured by carrying it. I felt a bit strange carrying it at times, being a white English woman. It's been a powerful thing, and John wrote to me after seeing the images of the flag flying at all these protests in England, and he said, we are so tired and we are so hurt by this industry and what it's done to us. And seeing our flag flying at British protests has given us a whole new boost. It's like a shot in the arm. Because this is a global movement. We are all in this like never before. We have to remember that. We have to work together. we are many, they are few. I did have a couple more slides to show you, but it seems I may have lost those. But not to worry, there's one more piece of footage I want to show. It was a film that was made by Felix Gonzalez at the Balkan camp, and it's still one of the most moving pieces of footage I've seen. It doesn't have any words. It's beautiful. I've never yet been able to watch that without a tear. That camp made history that changed my life. thank you to Felix and Catherine and U&I Films for making that clip. There is so much footage out there. I don't think anything like that has happened in this country. I know there have been big marches, big historical political campaigns, but there was something about Volcom that shifted something. Something, pardon the pun, a seismic shift in consciousness of people who are realising that our governments do not have our best interest at heart. I was brought up to think they did, but they don't. They're not protecting people or wild ecology with their short-sighted fossil fuel lust. We've got the battery back on the laptop, so I'll just go back to what John said. I live in the heart of a major gas player in Pennsylvania. The gas companies are destroying our wilds and our crystal clear streams. For most of my life, I fed our families with the gifts from the wilds. No generation past mine is likely to ever do that again. You must do all that is possible to stop this. This terroristic assault on your home. He's not exaggerating. I thought he was when I first read it. This industry is built on lies and deceit. Walk strong, my friend, my heart is with you. John LaRose. Now that's a man who I feel a real fondness for, who I've never met, and this is what's happening with this campaign is a military word, I don't really like to use it. Movement, perhaps. He sent a flag to this country, which has also been to Europe with me, it's been to France, and it's been to Ireland, and I'll just close with that, because when I first got involved with this, I started Frack Free Sussex, and then soon after that I felt really strongly that we needed to include Ireland, and I started an initiative. It's an affirmation. It's not even, it's a Facebook page. It's called BIF, Britain and Ireland Frack Free. And last year I went to Ireland and I took the flag and I flew the flag on Shimor with the wild ponies on the sacred mountain. And it's going to set me off just looking at that. And I travelled from Sligo through Leitrim, through Enniskillen, up to the North Antrim coast, spoke with farmers, spoke to local communities, and sat in a meeting in Enniskillen with 35 people of every accent from all over Ireland. And there was tension in the room, and it was chaired by someone from Belfast, but we were all there for a common cause, and we did some good alchemy that day. And somebody told me that they knew someone who went from Fermanagh to Leitrim for an anti-fracking meeting. This person had never set foot in the Republic of Ireland before. They'd never left Northern Ireland. And what I thought was my naive English rhetoric of, this can heal Ireland. The water flows across the border, the birds fly across the border. The politicians are now using that rhetoric, and it's true. This is a terrible threat. It is a fracking nightmare where it's already happened, in Fracksylvania, in Queensland, in some other parts of the world that we're just beginning to find out about. But if enough people take the terrible hindsight from these places and we act together, we will bring the sanity, we will stop it, and we will have thorough, safe, renewable energy, safe energy future with safe employment. Energy security that they keep talking about. And maybe we'll still have a world left. Thanks for watching.